So a lot of this seemed to be about being really strategic with the risks you take, and knowing that you're going to invest some of your energy and some of your money and some of your time in personal projects, and then that's really important to fuel your kind of continued passion for what you do. But you have to be really careful about which jobs tick all those boxes. I found it really interesting that you all had a different way, basically, of justifying which risks to take. Can you tell me a little bit about that process of going through and ticking the boxes? What works for you, Troy?
I don't know. I think it's, as I said before, I think it's working within a team and listening and kind of weighing up, trying to find the reason of why you're doing something. So weighing up the money aspect, how much you love the project, yeah, I don't really know.
I wanted to ask you, Andrew, as well. There was a really interesting point that Troy made, which was that you're not always the audience. And that can be really hard for designers in particular. Sorry to any designers here, but, quite often proving your point and winning the case on one job can mean that you lose that client altogether, or it means sometimes that you put too much effort into a project that really is just about that profit column.
Yeah, I mean, I think Troy's making a really interesting point, and it's something that we really believe in, and that is, especially with personal projects or self-commissioned work or self-funded work, is that you have to actually step outside your own world and understand what is this beast going to do and how are people going to respond to it. And the reality is, if you're only creating something that will indulge yourself, it becomes really meaningless and pointless. And I did do a project like that, and it fell on its face. Actually, it didn't even make it anywhere, because we looked at it after a year and we said, this is a self-indulgent pile of shit. And we threw it in the bin, a year's worth of work and about $5,000, and we literally threw it in the bin. And that's where demo came from, because we said the sole purpose of whatever we do has to involve someone outside ourselves. And yeah, I think that's related to what you're saying. It's actually something else driving the project instead of yourself. And you are right, Jess, when you say especially designers, graphic designers, art directors, we tend to fall into the trap of just making things look shit hot, but do they have any meaning or purpose behind them? And yeah, I can walk down the street and see a million things that look shit hot, but they don't have any meaning or purpose behind them. So if you can create something with meaning and purpose, then you'll find that people will gravitate towards it and it'll drive itself.
Something else that I found really interesting was that came up a couple of times, is that when you try and second guess your audience, or when you are a little bit cynical about things and think that's what the public wants, that's when you're most likely to get it wrong. And that you really have to be sincere and just go with what you love. So what I found interesting about TMOD is that what's at the basis of your work is the value, the idea of making something interactive. So does that mean that you could do anything basically as long as it had that, it corresponded with those values?
Yeah, definitely. We want to work across like multidisciplines, so like object design, jewelry design, graphic design. We'd like to work across and apply that interactivity and personality to a variety of forms, as long as it withholds that philosophy of being interactive and playful.
So I guess the idea is to ask why you're doing things, understand what your point of difference is, or understand what your philosophy is, and then question or interrogate everything that you do against those foundations when you're making decisions about where you spend your time.
Yeah, definitely. So we always come back to something, and with the Art and Soul project, we wanted to change the functionality of it from an Ugg boot into a vase, because otherwise decorating the Ugg boot had no real meaning for us. For other fashion designers, that's great because they're fashion designers and embellishing it and drawing on it. But for us, we wanted to change the functionality so it adhered to our philosophy.
And I think we also do it maybe the opposite way, where we design with the art cards, just kind of how we would naturally do it, and without guessing our market response. And then after, we do take that into account with the next one, so it's ever evolving. But at the beginning, yeah, we do all our own creative research and design from there.
We never wanted to write anything on the cards. Ever.
I think like interestingly looking at these guys and what they've done is, and we're talking about all these big words about strategic thinking and all that kind of stuff, but some of the most inspiring things are just when you actually have a crack and have a go. And I know that sounds really simple after some of the slides I've been showing about performance, profit and personal, but the great way to learn something is to have a go, and I've failed a number of times, and I think everyone on this panel has done the same. And sometimes all the thought processes in the world can make you lead to one point. As Troy said, like you can overthink things. Sometimes it's just best to go out there and actually jump off the deep end, and if you sink, then hopefully you'll swim next time, and if you swim, well, good on you. So I think that's an important point to make amongst all this strategic thinking as well. There's different ways to do it.
Just on a practical level, and this has been my last question before we go to the audience, on a practical level, how do you do it? Do you set aside this many days in your week that you're going to do your passion projects? Or, you know, in the case of having a company, can you take a risk on this much of your expenditure every year? How do you actually decide how many risks to take?
We'll go down the table.
Yeah, go down.
I mean, I think like personal projects come around by a passion, and they happen for a reason. It's through a relationship, through a friendship, through a client. So they sometimes evolve themselves. I will be brutally honest and say to you, when I take on a personal project, I do look at the personal effects, but I do look at where this project is going to get me, what it's going to do for me, and is it going to take me somewhere else? And that's basically what I was saying before. And I'm going to go back on what I said before, is that there can be a strategic element to that. And that's not a bad thing. Like, some people have to, you know, let go of the fact that you can be strategic in being creative. Like, strategy can take your creative to another level, into more people's homes, into more people's eyes than ever before. So when I take on personal projects, I look at the merits of it, the quality of it, but also how this project is going to affect other people, affect myself, but then also how it's going to benefit other people and myself.